You felt it, didn't you? That sudden shift in your chest when you thought about them again? Not pain like before, something different. Like the silence between you two is no longer empty. It feels charged, almost like something is moving behind the scenes that you cannot see yet. And the question you cannot shake is simple. Why now? Why, after all this distance, does it feel like something is changing? Because there is something you were never told about divine timing in relationships. It does not always announce itself with clarity. Sometimes it starts with discomfort, a restlessness, a strange pull in the spirit when someone begins to think about you differently. And I need you to stay with me here, because what I am about to say will challenge how you have been interpreting silence. Not every silence means absence. Some silences are preparation. There's a scripture that says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he wishes." Proverbs 21, verse 1. That means something deeper is happening in places you cannot access. Not emotion alone, not coincidence, but influence beyond human awareness. And here's where it becomes interesting, because when God begins to turn a heart, the first thing that shifts is not communication, it is awareness. Suddenly, they start remembering you without reason. Your name shows up in thoughts that were quiet for a long time, and they don't even understand why. But here's the part most people miss. When a heart begins to shift, distance becomes uncomfortable. What once felt normal starts to feel wrong. And this is where the tension builds. Because if that is true, then what exactly is being activated right now between you and them? Why does it feel like the connection is no longer still? Why does it feel like something is about to move? And I need you to be honest with yourself right now. Have you noticed small changes lately? A message that almost came through but didn't? A name that resurfaced unexpectedly? A moment where they felt closer even without contact? Don't ignore that, because this is where most people miss what is actually unfolding. They wait for big, obvious signs, but spiritual shifts rarely start that way. They start quietly, in the background, like something being rewritten without permission from circumstance. And here's what makes this even more intense. If what is happening is truly divine influence, then the next phase is not silence, it is action. Something has to break the stillness. Something has to respond to what is being stirred. And I'm going to show you what that looks like, because what happens next is not random. It's the part most people are not ready for, and it changes everything about how they see you. But before we go there, you need to understand why this specific moment is different from every other season of waiting you have experienced. And it starts with one hidden sign most people overlook completely. There is something you need to notice right now, because what you are calling delay is not always delay. Sometimes it's alignment happening in places you cannot see. And the reason this feels heavier than before is because the shift is already in motion, not coming, already happening. But it doesn't show up in your life first. It shows up in their thoughts, in their memory, in their silence. And I need you to understand this clearly. When a heart begins to turn, confusion usually comes before clarity. That's the strange pattern of emotional awakening. It doesn't begin with certainty, it begins with disruption. That's why Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Because once something begins to influence the heart, everything else eventually follows. And this is where things become more specific. There is a moment that starts to happen internally for them. They begin to compare the present with the past, and you appear in that comparison more than you think. Not as pressure, not as memory alone, but as unresolved meaning. Something about you did not close properly in their mind, and now it's reopening, slowly, quietly, without permission. And this is where the emotional tension increases, because when someone starts revisiting what they thought they moved on from, their behavior starts to shift in subtle ways. They become distracted, they become inconsistent, they become unusually reflective. And if you're paying attention, you start to feel it before you see it. A change in energy, a strange sense that something is trying to reconnect, even without contact. But here's what makes this more intense. Not every reopening leads to pursuit. Some people ignore it and suppress it. Others cannot. And what decides that difference is not logic. It's pressure within the heart that refuses to stay silent. And that pressure builds until it requires expression. That's when action begins to form, but not in a straight line. It starts messy, indirect, almost confusing. You might notice small signs, a sudden view, a random reaction, a message that never gets sent, and you'll wonder if you imagined it, but you didn't, because what is forming now is not loud enough for certainty. It's only strong enough for awareness. And this is where many people miss their moment. They dismiss the early signals because they don't look like what they expected. But divine timing rarely matches expectation. It disrupts it. And I want you to sit with this question for a moment. If they are truly being drawn back, why does it feel like the distance is shrinking even when nothing has changed physically? That's the tension you are in right now. The invisible movement before visible pursuit. And what comes next is the point where internal pressure finally breaks into external action, where thoughts can no longer stay hidden, where silence starts to lose control. And I need to show you what that breaking point actually looks like, because it is closer than most people realize. And when it happens, it changes the direction of everything you thought was finished. But I am not going to reveal that part yet, because there is one more layer you need to understand about what God does right before a person starts pursuing you again. Right before pursuit begins, something subtle happens first, and most people completely miss it. The resistance starts to weaken, not in a dramatic way, but in small internal cracks they cannot explain. Things they were once sure about no longer feel as solid. The distance that felt normal before starts to feel unnecessary. And here's what's really happening beneath the surface. There's a shift in emotional direction where their attention begins to return without effort, not because they planned it, but because something within them is no longer at peace staying away. And this is where the scripture becomes very real. Philippians 2 verse 13 says, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose." That means even willingness can be influenced, even desire can be redirected. And when that begins to happen, the person does not immediately understand themselves. They just feel pulled back towards something they thought they had moved on from, back toward a connection they tried to silence, back toward you. But here's the part that surprises people. Pursuit does not always start with bold action. It starts with inner surrender. The moment they stop resisting the thought of you, the moment your name stops feeling distant, the moment curiosity becomes stronger than pride, that's the turning point. And from there, action becomes only a matter of time. You might see it as something simple, a message that finally comes through, a reply that was delayed for too long, a conversation that restarts without warning. But spiritually, it's deeper than that. It's alignment catching up with internal change. Now listen carefully, because this is where everything comes together. The reason this season feels intense for you is because you are sensing movement before it fully manifests. That tension you feel is not imagination, it's transition. but I need you to hold this with wisdom. Not every turning heart moves the same way, and timing is never identical for everyone. So while this message confirms what's shifting, it also reminds you to stay grounded, to stay focused, to not lose yourself in waiting, because what God builds in you during silence is just as important as what He restores through connection. And now I want you to do something simple but powerful. If this message resonates with what you've been feeling lately, comment the word turning, not for validation, but as a point of agreement that you are paying attention to your season. And if you're believing for clarity, for peace, for direction in love, you are not alone in that process. More importantly, stay connected to this channel, because there are moments that follow this kind of shift that most people are never prepared for, and I'll be breaking those down in the next videos on the playlist you will see in the description. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And if this message found you at the right time, share it with someone who needs clarity in their own waiting season, because what is turning right now is only the beginning of what comes next.